time here, and we're going to see exactly how this all transpired. We're going to take a look at the voting results and a little recap on lessons learned of what we could have done better or differently. Next slide is a timeline. If you recall back mid-December, we did a reserve replacement analysis group, completed a 7-month-long reserve study, and made its recommendation to the board. On January 10th, we had that strategic plan town hall. It was conducted presenting a three-legged stool depicting a strategic plan, a facility master plan, as well as a 10-year financial plan. Subsequent to that, we had 3 town hall meetings informing the residents of a decision that needed to be made to meet the 10-year financial plan, the third leg of that stool. Option 3 was presented to the community for a vote. Next slide. If you recall, the assessment asked was $4,200 to be paid over 4 years. This would ensure that our community can meet all reserve study maintenance requirements over the next 10 years. We can pay off the Mountain View loan in September of this year and pay cash for the preserve renovation in 2027, and as well as stop the escalation of dues increases that we have experienced over the last 6 years, and quite honestly has made us uncompetitive in the other markets, in our market. Next slide. You know, at the beginning of the campaign, there were numerous opportunities for residents to get more information on option 3. In addition to the 3 town halls that I mentioned earlier, Board Secretary Sean Kreiderman and Financial Chair Campbell Cheney conducted 11 unit meetings, reaching approximately 800 residents. And then Sean and marketing department met with the real estate partners and with 15 realtors in attendance to discuss it with them so that they understood what the implications were for if they sold a house during the voting period. Next slide. Voting started on March 12th. Electronic ballots were emailed to all residents with email addresses registered to the Saddlebrook HOA 2. So if you had an email address registered with us, you automatically got that electronic ballot. Paper ballots, and on top of that, were mailed to all residents, and in cases where a resident had more than one email address or a additional mailing address, ballots were sent to both addresses to ensure coverage. Next slide. In addition, a ballot box was available to accept ballots during business hours at the administration office and secured in a locked safe every night. Regular updates and reminders were sent to residents on a regular basis, and the voting ended 2 p.m. on Tuesday, April 30th. Your committee, as well as 4 members of the HOA2 staff, spent 6.5 hours here counting those ballots, and we had a number of people in attendance in and out throughout that 6.5 hours, but observation was certainly permitted and even really encouraged if you wanted to come and watch. Next slide. Voting results were pretty apparent. We received 2,994 votes. Of those, 1/3 yes and 2/3 were no votes. Okay, so 84% of the properties voted in the election. Robeson did vote on this. So they have 108 properties, and they did vote in the election. Next slide. I want to thank you, residents. This is amazing. You know, we were debating. You know, we really heard loud and clear. So you got your voice heard. We're very, very appreciative of that. As an election committee, we were shooting for 60% participation. but all of your petition came through with 84%, so your voice has been heard. Next slide. Let's try to analyze a little bit here in terms of the actual vote. This tells you the number of yes votes by paper and no votes by paper, and the fact that 46% of the votes were by paper ballot, 54% were electronic. Of the yes votes, 26%, and 74% is evidence in the prior slide. One thing that when looking at these numbers, a disproportionate number of no votes were by paper ballot. If you can see, 82% of the paper ballots were no votes. And it's apparent to us on the election committee that members are not confident in the electronic voting system. And we as a committee need to do a better job in educating members that it's a very safe and secure system. I've been through their website, I've looked at it extensively, and they have hundreds and hundreds of different HOAs that use this, including all of the ropes and HOAs, use this system. It's very safe and secure. We just need to do a better job of conveying that. Next slide. Let's talk about disqualified votes. If you recall, during this time period, we sent out continual reminders about if you did certain things, your vote would not be recognized and not counted. Well, in going back through all those votes, we were able to find out that there were 26 incorrectly filled out ballots that were not counted, and they were not counted in any of this, so they are not counted as voting. There were 2 that were past due on HOA dues. There were 63 votes that were not counted because they were past due on member charges. There was 1 code of conduct violation, and 59 of the residents voted more than once, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 1 member voted 3 times. So a total of disqualified votes were 151. Lessons learned, next slide here, yes, lessons learned. Again, we need to do a better job of educating members that the electronic vote process is much quicker, more secure, and more accurate than voting by paper ballot. If you recall, when you got your paper ballot, inside, when you opened it up, it was the instructions and all of the information you needed. But the actual ballot was embedded right into the second page. So, the election committee didn't want to know who voted or how they voted. All we wanted to know was their vote. So to secure the fact, the identity of the voter, what we ended up having to do that evening of the vote is to cut this off. The HOA staff was on the other end of the stage, cut this off and pass the vote down here. It's a little cumbersome. So the next time we vote, what we're going to try and do is to put this as a separate, and this will be the only thing that will be inside your envelope. So you'll get all the data, all the information, but we're hopeful that the only thing you'll put in that envelope, if you decide to vote by paper ballot, will in fact be the ballot, and all of your information will be on the outside of the ballot filled out. That'll be our goal this next time around, should we have one. The 50-day voting window, is that really necessary? It seems like a long period of time. In the last 30 days or so, the last 20 days, we only generated about 4% of the vote. So the high percentage was generated in the first 30 days, in fact, the first 2 weeks. But we need to look at that. I'd like to bring that 50 days, seems like a very, very long window for a voting period. Okay, so that was just a recommendation from the committee. Next slide. I would be very remiss if I didn't have a note of thanks here. I got to tell you, Walter, you and your staff have been amazing. The cooperation that our committee got was amazing. These are the people, Cass Striplin, who's here. Greg Ballard's not here. They're members of the election committee. We met on a regular basis to make certain that all the T's were crossed, I's were dotted, questions that were answered. We did our very best. Adele Allen is an amazing person. She led the HOA2 staff, was our liaison. She worked tirelessly on your behalf and our behalf. Amazing person. Annette Lyons was a vote counter. She was here that night till 8:30 with the rest of us, put in a 13-hour day. Chelsea Walther, the same thing. They agreed to help out. They cut the ballots, put the ballots back. And of course, Dale Tate here, our patrol captain, was in charge of vote security. He brought the votes over. He was present during the total vote counting process. But beyond them, everybody, the front desk people were there. Charlie was for us for any questions that we needed answered. So the staff was tremendous. I can't speak highly enough. So my question, next slide, the question is, where do we go from here? Back to you.
Will you give it to me?
Get the what? Oh.
Before Mike, before you leave, does anybody on the board have any questions for Mike? Yeah, I'll echo. I think I'll speak on behalf of the entire board. We know it was a long night for you, but throughout this entire period, all the work that I know I watched you and your team doing, I just want to extend our appreciation for a job well done. Thank you. Rick, go ahead and throw my agenda slide up there, even though we're way past the agenda. Go ahead, next one. There you go. Go ahead to the next one. Okay, he'll get it. So, for the members of the board, when we had our town halls and we made our presentations to the community, we talked about being at the Y in the road. Fork in the road, thank you. I knew it would come back to us. And we said if we didn't pass option 3, the RRAG had given us options 1 and 2 as options that we as the board could consider for implementation, at least to start the process down the road to meet the challenges of the $14.7 million catch-up requirement in the reserve fund. So option 1, I just want to put the highlights up here and quickly remind everybody, not only on the board, but everybody that's here and is watching at home. The key points for option 1, where the preserve rebuild will be conducted in 2029, the greens resurfacing / rebuild that's currently scheduled in 26 would be pushed to 29. In option 1, we would need a loan to pay for the irrigation system. And the special assessment required with this strategy would include 5 $300 assessments and 1 year at $150 in 2029. In option 1, no resident vote was required. Next slide, Rick. A quick review of option 2. Again, the preserve rebuild would be conducted in 2029. The greens resurfacing / rebuild would be pushed from 26 to 29. No loan would be needed for this strategy. The special assessment that the board would have to enact over the next 6 years would be $300. And of course, the dues would be higher than option 1. And no resident vote would be required. Next slide. I don't have to talk about. Option 3 no longer exists. So I'll remind everybody, the board was not united in this campaign. 5 of the 7 members of the board supported option 3, and 2 did not. The 2 wanted to pursue a second course of action, which they thought had a much better chance of success than the one that we set before the community. It turns out they got the first part of it right. The community did not support the thinking of 5 members of the board that voted to put that before you. So one of the members that wanted this $1,500 assessment is going to tell us, as board members, why we should pursue this as a strategy.
Well, I guess you know who voted against option 3. Chuck and I. Chuck and I are both retired CPAs. I look at things a little differently than non-financial people. The first thing I looked at, and Chuck looked at, were we are working right now on how do we get our operations better so that our subsidies aren't as high. And where do we save money? I'll give you an example. This credit card fee is going to save us well over $100,000 a year. That's an operating expense. These are the types of things that need to be considered going forward when you're looking at having monies available to do reserve items. Another thing is that was a real hindrance was Mountain View was just completed, and we don't know how well the results are going to be over the next couple of years and what the subsidy is going to be. We need to know that before we go forward and say, let's go get a bunch of money out of people. Another thing, and I look at little things, okay? Because if we can save $1 here and $1 there, it all adds up. And I brought this up to Matt the other day. I said, I was looking at accounts receivable, and there's over 800 people here in this community that get an electronic statement, and they have one mailed to them. Well, you know what that cost us in postage every year? Oh, $5,000–6,000. You go, okay, that's not a lot of money, but if people understood the little things and we keep looking for those, we can save a lot of money. So from the mind of a CPA and with over 2 decades experience working with reserves on another HOA, this is where my mind goes, okay? So I felt that, well, not only the 1,500 was probably the right way to go, but it came from the residents. This was their option 4, and they wanted us to at least look at it. And I went back to my neighbors and everybody I could talk to, and I said, honestly, give me your feelings. What are you guys feeling deep down in your hearts and in your gut? And every one of them said that option 4 is the way to go. So I just couldn't support the option 3. I mean, I just couldn't go against the people I live with. And so that's kind of the reason why. Now, I put a pencil to how we go forward, and I don't want to get into the details. I've spent hours and hours on it, and I found a way to get almost what we need to do the other chorus over a period of time. It might need a little help from everybody, but I think through proper money management, we can get there. It's going to need some SIF funds over the next few years, 3, 4, 5 years, and some other things. But what this does, by voting down option 3, if option 4 is successful, it puts us back to work to properly manage our funds over the next 4 or 5 years. That's what a board is for. We need to do some money management here, and it's been kind of lacking. Not saying anything against these folks. They're not CPAs, okay? They don't have that type of experience. And so I just felt that Chuck and I, when we talked about it and we started banging things back and forth, there is a path forward, okay? It doesn't need increases in dues right now. We need to find out where we're going with all the golf courses, with the restaurant. Let me say this. Last month, probably about the first time, the restaurant actually came in profitable, the 2 of them, for the first 3 months. Well, This just tells you that we're working on those things. Now, we're going into the summer, so we know that we're going to have to, we won't be making money in the summer. It's going to go the other direction, but I don't know of any 3 months where we've ever had a profit. So, but once again, operations, 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 okay? And if you do better in your operations, how much more can go over to the reserve? So, I guess.
Next slide.
Do I need to say anything else?
Well, why don't you brief that slide?
Oh, let me get my glasses on to see what the heck's going on here.
This one right here in front of you.
Okay, the preserve, rebuild. Actually, in my plan, I think we can start it in 28 and do some of the greens and tee boxes starting in 27. We have to gather a lot of information first, okay? We have to get with the contractors, find out what can be done, and based on structuring these things over a period of a few years, what it costs to do them. Now, I know it's going to cost a little more to do things over a period of time, but then I look back at a board a couple years ago, and they had no problem spending $1 million on interest to get that job done. So if it costs a little more to do this over a period of a few years and you can self-fund it, then that's my idea of where we should go. Okay, so what's the next step? Okay, oh, while we're talking about paying off this loan, you know this right now, this loan is costing us about $900 a day in interest. $900 a day. I look at that and I just shake my head. Hundreds of thousands of dollars that's being wasted of your money and my money because something happened before we got here, and I'm not going to say it was a mistake. I'm just going to say we're paying for it, and we're going to continue paying for it for the next few years. The other thing, if we do not pass a 1,500 assessment, almost half of the money going into the reserve, we will be going to pay the payment on this loan. That barely leaves enough left in there to do the roads and maybe some emergency repairs. So for the next few years, we're going to sit here scratching our heads, wondering how we're going to take care of things that are coming up that are normal things, okay? If we need new air conditioners, if we need some carpeting, I don't know. I just don't know how we're going to do it. Next item. I'm done.
Oh, okay, now wait a second. Okay. We're going to pay all of our bills. And there is a detailed plan on how we're going to move forward over the next 5 years. We're not going to be scratching our heads about how we're going to pay our bills. I need you to know sound planning has been done. The requirements are known. The resource streams are projected. So there's no guessing about how we're meeting our responsibilities in the coming years. I do not want that. I was asked again, as a matter of fact, I was told this morning that I've said on numerous occasions we are not in a crisis. That is true. We're not in a crisis. We're trying to sort out. This whole exercise was to identify how we were going to get through the preserve, rebuild, and meet the challenges of the next decade. And so the best thinking of smart Larry and Chuck are CPAs, had a lot of CPAs working on the planning that was presented to you. So I don't want you to think that the only CPAs that exist are on the board. That just wouldn't be true. And the plans that are in place, all those members of the Finance Committee and all those members of the RRAG, which included past treasurers, and yes, CPAs, did all that planning and analysis. And so what I want you to understand about, go back, Rick. This is one topic that Larry and Chuck have been trying to socialize with the board for the last couple of months because of interest by members of the community. And I will say not all members of the community agree with it. But this was part of their campaign in opposition to option 3, was they had this alternative. Let's just deal with one little piece of this puzzle. Let's pay off the Mountain View loan. True or false? That's true. Okay. And so this whole conversation that we, the board, are having here today amongst ourselves is, do we go after a $300 assessment, or do we go after another vote with the community on this idea of a $1,500 assessment? And that is the purpose of our discussion and debate here today, is to come to a board decision on how we should go forward. And so, I guess, is there anybody else that wants to make a comment?
Okay, Larry, to you, and you will answer for Chuck since he's not here. I'm doing my math, and we wanted our residents to pay their $1,750 PAO and another $1,500, which would be $3,250 in July.
Yeah, it's a biggie.
As I told you in the email I sent you, big is the big question here.
It's going to be huge.
And then you're asking the people that voted no to now pay $1,750 plus $1,500, which I said will be $3,250. The proposal we had as option 3 was $1,750 and $1,200. So you're asking them to pay, the people that said no, you're asking them to pay another $300 all in July. So they will owe us
No, they'll
Thir-
owe themselves.
with themselves, but $3,250.
That's right.
And how are you going to get that
Okay,
across is
let
my
me-
question to you and Chuck.
Here was the plan. It's big. And there are some people out here, we have a handful, maybe 10%, maybe 15% of our people that can't afford it in one fell swoop. So what I wanted to propose to the board was for those who financially can't come up with that kind of money because maybe they save monthly to pay their other dues, to make their dues payment with one payment of $250, fill out a little form that we would have at the desk asking for a financial review, and then Chuck or I would sit with them, go over their financial data, and determine a payment plan that fits them. And with this, there would be no penalties or interest charged, because that's huge also. So for those folks that really can't, I mean really can't afford this, we have to come up with a way to allow them to pay it over some time. I don't know how else to do it, because you can't say to someone, well, if you can't afford to live here, get the hell out. I mean, you just can't do that. And we have to be really sensitive to the folks that really do have a financial burden here. So that would be my proposal to the board, if we went forward with this, to have that in there for people who really can't afford to pay it in one fell swoop. That's all I got to say on that.
I wouldn't embarrass my neighbors that way.
Any other questions or comments?
I guess I'll make a comment. I'm not so sure. I'm still trying to digest what this last conversation was, because I think that brings up an awful lot of concern on my part. But the issue at hand really is the next step, and I do believe, given the opposition to the option 3, which was considered to be the optimum position by the Finance Committee and Reserve Group, as well as the long-term view of where it puts us on dues. Given that opposition, it is my opinion that the best next step we can do is to pay off the loan if in fact people agree to that. So the $1,500 assessment, in my opinion, is for me the next best step. I'm not sure I'm buying into the idea that some people can pay it over time, and if you don't have money, come see Larry, and I think that's a real problematic issue. You need to have something very well defined if you want to implement something like that. So I'm suggesting that not be a part of this process. The process, in my opinion, be clearly $1,500 dues assessment and pay off the Mountain View loan. Future budgets will be set to take care of future issues with regard to the reserve renovation, and that's where we go down the road. So I'm in favor of the $1,500. I'm not in favor of some connection between how you can pay and you can't pay. I think it's a can of worms that we don't want to be a part of, but that's my opinion.
Go ahead.
So my question is, when I look at the vote, it tells me that our community doesn't really want to pay more. So what I struggle with is, there's one side of me that, I do have a financial background, by the way. I don't have a CPA, but I think I could hold my own in my career. That we need to pay that loan off. And we inherited all that, this board did, which I agree with you, we need to get that loan paid off. But the other side tells me that our community has spoken, and we have to hear that. So that's what I'm tossing around, that I completely agree with you that we need to get that loan paid off, but I struggle with that when it's 74% said no, and I know that it was a bigger number, but it's still 74% said no, and that's a pretty big number. And then to go ask them for another vote again, right now, because we'd have to do it immediately to get that loan paid off. I mean, we have a time crunch now to get another vote out there. And does our community really want to do that? I guess that's where I'm struggling right now.
I think Denise, you forget that this proposal was put out by the community, not by us. And we just needed to listen to them. So I don't know if this would pass. I do think that if it didn't, the vote would be very close. But I have, in my heart, I feel it would pass. Okay.
In the interest of full disclosure for you good people, the RRAG, the Replacement Reserve Analysis Group, worked through 10 courses of action. The CPAs in that body, their number one priority was to pay off the Mountain View loan. This option 4 course of action was one of the 10 courses of action developed by the RRAG. Given the task that they were given last year by the board treasurer and the board, they produced the optimum solution to meet all the challenges they were asked to consider. If they would have been asked to just consider paying off the loan, we'd have got what is affectionately known as the people's choice. And so again, I was there, I got to watch the CPAs in that room who argued vehemently that that loan needed to be paid off as quickly as we could get it paid off. And so it's nice to know that the thinking that happened inside that room actually is getting traction with residents in the community. So, is anybody going to champion a $300 assessment? Or do we need to battle over the $1,500 assessment?
300 won't do us any good, man.
Okay. So, all right, I no longer know, I won't pretend to know the will of the people on this subject. We missed so badly on the first effort. The truth is, I don't know what the majority of our members will come down on this deal. But as somebody that's been involved in the number crunching for a while now, I can tell you there is no way to meet the requirements of the future and promise you no dues increases. That cannot be allowed to happen. It's going to take money to meet the challenges of the next decade, regardless of how well we do in all the things that we have committed ourselves to do well at. And I'm being frank with you. You don't wish away, and you can't suspend reality when it comes to a $14 million shortfall. And so this particular debate is about one piece of that big puzzle that the RRAG took on and provided to us as board members. And so I want you to understand that this is a step in the journey, and there's going to be a lot more conversations in that journey. And so if we want to continue to have this discussion, I need a motion for board consideration, Larry.
I just want to make one more little comment. The committee was given the task of coming up with $14.7 million to take care of a shortfall. Some of that 14.7 can be taken care of through lower subsidies that are given to the amenities and savings in operations. And that's one item that I don't think they were allowed to consider because we don't know what those numbers are yet. At least now we can go forward and have proper information to determine what that will be in the future and then deal with it. But it's going to take a couple of years to get those real numbers. Now, that doesn't mean we have to stop doing a 5-year plan and a 10-year plan. We definitely have to do it, but we have to be willing to adjust as we get more, better information provided to us. So with that, do we need to talk about the day's voting window? Okay. Okay, so I'll make them.
We don't need to talk about this
Okay.
if we don't approve.
Okay, I got you. I got you. So I'll make a motion to go to the community again, asking for a special assessment of $1,500 to pay this loan off as soon as possible. And part of that, well, we'll talk about that in a minute.
I have a motion to send option 4 back to the community, which is an ask for $1,500 to pay off the Mountain View Golf Course renovation loan. I need a second.
Yeah, I'll second it. I mean, I think it's better than the option of the 300. There's no question about it. We can't project what it's going to do to dues or anything else in the future until we do an in-depth analysis. It only takes care of 30% of the money that we originally said we needed to have, but 30% is better than 8%. So whatever we get, if we get it, and I agree with Denise's logic, I'm not sure whether we have enough people to really decide they want to spend that chunk of money given the results, but regardless, it's certainly worth going after. So I would second the motion.
If I can paraphrase all of that, Mark? Yes. I have a motion to send option 4 for $1,500 to our members for their consideration, and I have a second. Thank you. Discussion?
I don't think we have a choice as a board, and I'm happy that we have a clean motion of just raising the money. I don't want any other stipulations put with it. I would never, ever embarrass my neighbors or my friends and saying, how much money do you have? I just think that's rude.
Thank you, Sean. Ladies and gentlemen, I should have done this when we did introductions. Chuck Hill is out of state on vacation, and he's given his proxy for all actions being undertaken here today to his battle buddy, Larry. So Larry will be representing himself and Chuck today in our deliberations. Are there any other discussion items from the board? Seeing none, I will now open it up to residents. We have a motion and a second to send option 4 to our members. And we'll talk about, after we take the board vote, we'll talk about what that looks like here in a second. And so I'll take any questions or comments you may have at this point.
Let me do a quick reminder. We have a 2-minute rule associated to the time at the mic. We need your name, your unit lot, and your lot number. One thing that is also important during motions, please stick to the motion. I know people want to kind of tell a story, and that's okay, but bottom line is, when you're with your comments, please stick to the motion. And the motion currently is a $1,500 assessment to pay off the Mountain View loan. Thank you.
Duff Fletcher, Unit 15. I've only got a 2-hour story to tell you, but I'll do it in 30 seconds. Shouldn't this have a date as to when this is going to be payable?
Hey, Duff, you're ahead of us.
Well, it's part of the motion. I think.
No, okay, so let me clarify so there's no confusion. The only thing the board's considering right now is whether or not we're going to submit option 4 to the members for their consideration. Following that vote, we will then have a discussion and a debate, I am sure, about voting period. Out of those, we have 3 potential courses of action. Out of those course of actions will come those dates you're asking for.
Okay, thank you.
Steve Lindquist, Unit 45, Lot 98. You finally made the right choice. As many of you know, I do write on several of these posts often out there. My gut feeling tells me from what I read and what I hear from everybody else, that is the right decision. The community will support that $1,500. I would be shocked if they didn't.
Andrea Mulberg, Unit 42, Lot 72. Just a clarification question. The 4,200 from option 3 was spread over 4 years. Am I correct on that? This is a one-time assessment. Is there a possibility of considering spreading some of the 1,500 over a couple of years to deal with the issue that you were worried about, Larry? Does the 50, in other words, if we were at the 4,200, we were looking at what, 1,050 for this year?
It was 1,000. It was 1,000, 1,100, 1,100, 1,000.
Right. Okay, and so if you were thinking 1,000, was that going to take care of the loan this year?
Yes, we were going to pay off the loan this year,
So that
but let me finish, please.
I'm just worried about
The
myself.
$1,000 would not have covered the whole bill.
Oh, I understand that. Would it cover the whole bill of the loan?
No.
Okay.
So you all understand at home, we were going to have to dip into our $3 million safety net to pay that off until January, and we were willing to make that short risk window. We were willing to do that, in this case, to get that loan paid off.
Hi, Denise Anthony, Unit 50, Lot 51. I want to tell you that we totally support the $1,500 option as one of the people who authored it to begin with, for 2 reasons. It's the loan and the interest, but it's the collateral. Remember, everybody, there's $3 million in collateral that is not currently invested in a market CDs paying 5.5%. We're losing interest on that because that's collateral to the bank for the loan. So there's a major advantage to the sooner we do this, the better off we're going to be. Knowing totally, Matt, in the future, we're going to have some issues down the road. We know that. But what's the best financial thing right now? Get this cleaned up as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Pat Lenz, whoops. Pat Lenz, Unit 45, Lot 2. Larry, you mentioned that this plan needs extensive review and how it attaches to the full need. It's one part. Our community was nearly torn apart by the first discussion. Now we're going to have another one, and we still don't have an end game. Saying you're going to change, what, this is going to bring in how many dollars against what we need to do, and you're going to do that through operations? I don't know, but I think that's going to be pretty difficult to do. And I think before you present this to community, you should have a complete analysis like the reserve group did over the 10 years and show the effect of this choice on the community with dues and things like that. Thank you.
Afternoon. My name is Alan Grotsky, Unit 23. Suggestion. With respect to the $1,500, as other people have said, I don't think we really have any choice but to pay the loan off and to save those hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest. I think what Ms. Kreidemann indicated, that $1,500 in July on top of the $1,750, $3,250 could be a burden, will be a burden for a percentage of our community. I agree with Dan. We can't become accountants, IRS people, look at people's financials and say, you can pay it off in a number of months. No, you have to pay it off now. That to me isn't realistic. We need the money. How about this? The dues that come due in July 1750, we know that. Break the $1,500 up into two payments. Add $750 to the $1,750 for July. Add $750 to the $1,750 in January to make up for that shortfall of $750 that we have to wait 6 months for. Could we not take that money out of the CIF and or the reserve fund and then pay it back in January when the loan is paid off? Just a thought. Thank you.
First off, I really like that idea. I was going to comment. I don't think there's.
We need your name and your unit, please.
Excuse me. Roger Beard, Unit 25, Lot 70. I like the. First of all, I don't think there's any argument at all about paying off the loan. It was a mistake, whether we say it or not. It was a mistake. And I also like Larry's sentiment about easing the pain for homeowners that can't afford it. I also agree with your argument that we do not want to be policemen. We're stuck. I was just going to suggest that $1,500 is a planning figure, obviously. Let's do the arithmetic, look at the details, and find out what the actual loan amount is, and do the math. So we pay an assessment. It's exactly that amount. It may be a bit less. Thank you.
Try this one. Oh, cool. Okay, thank you. Alan, I'm trying to write down and regurgitate what you said. I just want to make sure I got it right. What you're suggesting is break the 1,500 into 750s, one 750 in July, the other 750 in January. Is that correct? Is that what you're suggesting? Okay, kind of heard it, just want to make sure I did, so thank you.
Live, there we go. You just move it. Steve Lindquist, Unit 45, Lot 98. Just one question. How much is the balance on that loan?
Hey, okay, in September, it's 4.2 plus million. okay?
4.2, okay.
Yeah, about 90-some thousand's going on it every month. Right now, we're paying about 27,000 a month in interest.
Yeah.
That's how I came up with the $900.
Okay.
So right now, I mean, I look at paying how I want to pay it off if this passed, and as soon as money start coming in, every week, make a payment. That saves another 30 grand or
Yeah.
more.
I get it. Okay, so 4.2 or so. Am I not mistaken that $1,500 on the number of homes we have brings us in, I think I calculated about 4.8 million, something like that? 4.7? Okay. All right, thanks.
I'm Vern Luce, Unit 42, Lot 4, and I would make an appeal for clarification. There were a lot of other items on the option 4 that was presented in addition to paying off the loan. I would say let's tell the residents the per household charge to pay off the loan, no other stuff on the option, just that one item. Okay? Thank you.
Yes.
Sherry Groupie, Unit 45, Lot 73. I'd just like to say thank you for presenting what we feel is a very workable loan or a very workable solution to the situation and get that loan paid off immediately. We all know it's hurting us badly and draining money every day. We did do a survey. I don't know if you're aware, but we had a website with a survey. Had over 1,600, almost 1,700 people saw the website. There was a survey on it. Out of the people who answered, which isn't everybody, 100% of them said that they would not pay the $4,200 loan. Of that group of people, 84% said they would pay $1,500. So I'm hoping that helps you a little bit. It's hard. Certainly we can't all talk to everybody, but I think it's a good indication that we as a community, we care. We see the finances. We need to take some action, and this is certainly a great start. I do feel the $1,500 is a good number. It does give us a little bit of cushion. We have more things coming down the pike. We all know it. Exactly what they are, good news on the food and beverage, and that maybe we can start cutting down those subsidies. Maybe we don't need as much a year from now. So there's a lot of other factors that are going to happen over the next few years that will hopefully, working together, we can need not as much as maybe we thought, maybe. But I'm glad to see the $1,500, and we'll certainly be voting for it.
Hi, Dale Tate, Unit 35, Lot 63. I just want to understand that the $1,500 is only to pay off the Mountain View loan, doesn't cover anything else in the next 10 years. So we're basically kicking the can down the road every year for dues increases to cover whatever other projects we need to have done.
Yeah, I don't think it's not kicking the can down the road, but this is the only thing we're deciding right now. If it passes, the next thing will be that there'll be a detailed projection analysis, just like there was done for option 1, option 2, the 10 options that were looked at, to then figure out, okay, what does that mean if we've got that $1,500? What does that mean for dues, for future assessments, for how much we take out of CIF? All that's got to be recalculated and figured out. But that's something there's no reason to do it until you know whether you got the $1,500 or not. And that will all get done during the budget process, because this has all got to be decided, of course, by November when we do the budget. We have to make decisions on all that stuff for 2025. So anyway,
But it's fair to say that dues increases over the next however many years are going to be maybe more significant than they have been. Inflation,
no,
additional
I don't,
costs.
I don't think you can say that. I don't think you can fairly say that. All you can really say is that with this, we're getting about 30% of the money we said we needed. So we still got about $10 million we're going to have to raise, okay? How we raise that is going to be an analysis that's going to have to be done. Whether it's going to require still some increases in dues, we don't know. We know that the option 2 required a $4,800 dues after 10 years. Certainly, we're not going to need $4,800.
Could be more assessments.
But, you know, well, that's an option, although whether a future board would ever decide to do another assessment based on what's going on in the history here is for a future board to decide. So, thank goodness, I don't think I'll be involved in that. So, anyway. Oh, that's interesting.
You're done, Mark.
I guess my time is done. Either that or there's a fire,
Hey,
and we all
Dale.
have to leave.
If you ask the right question, you'll never get a second chance. Let me say this to you all as our fellow residents. The detailed planning never stops. Regardless of what happens here, whether the community stands behind this ask or not, if it doesn't, we've got the detailed planning done on the $300 assessment. Okay, we know what that looks like. We've already briefed that to you. We presented that to you ad nauseum over the last 5 months. What Mark just said to you was, if the community approves this $1,500 ask, there will be a detailed analysis and a 5-year plan that will lay out how we have to generate the money, knowing what we know now. All the unknown unknowns that people want to talk about, all we can do in building projections is to deal with the known knowns. And that's what you're going to get out of this board and our finance committee as we go through the budget process throughout the rest of this year. So I want you to have a high level of confidence that the detailed planning is going to happen, and you will know what the second and third order effects are if this vote should pass. I'm glad that made somebody happy.
Hi, John Sohikian, Unit 45, Lot 77. So to pay off the loan, we're talking about roughly $1,328. The rest of it was to set up between the $1,500 and the $1,328 was giving a little cushion there. So if you want to be exact, it would be somewhere around $1,330, $1,340. I think the thing that you got to keep thinking about here is you keep talking about this big number that you went out to the community to vote on. 10 million of that is a renovation of the preserve course. I would recommend the board consider looking at the model of HOA 1 where they have a head groundskeeper and a groundskeeping team that did most of the renovations on their golf courses.
John,
Yes.
we're really trying to stay on the motion.
I know, but you made a comment, though, about the number that you are saying we need going forward, and I just want the residents to realize that there are better ways to spend that 10 million than what you're suggesting, that's all. So yes, we firmly believe we should pay off the loan, get the 3.1 million back, put that in the reserve fund. That's money that's being just wasted in Western Alliance Bank. We can get it back. That can go in the reserve fund. And then, yes, look at how to be prudent in moving forward with the renovations of the golf course in the future. Thank you.
Does that mean you were for or against the $1,500? Thank you. That's what I was looking for.
I'm going to ask this to Larry. And maybe I'm telling tales out of school, but that's all right. For the 2024 first year half payment, we had almost 130 residents not pay their dues. Timely. So my concern is, if we were to do the 750 and 750, would that short us? And I don't want to live that way. So I think we need to think about that. I think that's an easier pill to swallow to make it 750 and 750. But we cannot guarantee, and this is a trend that I got from David Castro, it's been more, he's our comptroller, there's been more people not pay every dues paying time. So I don't want us as residents or as RHOA to be shorted to drop to say 1328, because if we say you need to pay the 1,500, then we'll get it, because I'm fearing we're going to have more people that will not pay. So can you, yeah, I want you to not guarantee me, you can guarantee nothing, and I don't have a magic wand, and you don't have a
Okay.
crystal ball.
If you did it in two pieces, we wouldn't be able to pay off the loan. You're going to run a little over $2 million, and that doesn't even come close to what we need to come up with. Unfortunately, like you said, it was 1,300 and change. Not everyone's going to pay on a timely basis, so the little extra cushion we have, and they were bringing enough money early enough to get the loan paid off. Whatever comes in after that will go right into the reserve to help replenish the reserve funds that we're going to need in the future and allow us to do future planning.
So not go below the 15.
I would do the 15 and do it one fell swoop.
Any other comments? Anyone else want to share? Seeing that, I have a motion on the table to send option 4 and ask of $1,500 with a second to the members. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Chuck says yes. Aye. So it's unanimous, Charlie. It's passed. Next slide, Rick. So, in discussing this, you heard Mike Brenny say he didn't like the 50-day voting period. So I need to remind everybody how we got to 50 days. It wasn't because anybody at this table thought that was a good idea. I want to review, can you go forward to the special election process? Yes, let me go through these slides with my board mates. And so the process that we executed on the first special assessment vote was a 50-day voting period. We voted electronically. Everybody was sent an absentee ballot. Every resident had the option to vote electronically or with paper, one vote per lot. Next slide. Our CC&Rs, let me get on the right page. Our CC&Rs demand that we have a special meeting called for the purpose of the special assessment vote. That's what we did on April 30th. We had a very short meeting. I introduced Mike. I talked about the purpose of the meeting. I introduced Mike. He made his last call for votes. He handed the meeting back over to me. I adjourned it. He spent the next 6.5 hours counting votes. That's the process. So we have antiquated state laws, and we got CC&R requirements. That is how the 50-day voting period process came along. Next slide. So the Arizona state statute says that we have to send a notice to every homeowner of the special assessment special meeting. In doing that, the attorney advised that we send everybody an absentee ballot. And that's what we did. So the 50-day requirement by the state is to make sure that you have 50 days notice on the time and place that we're going to conduct the meeting. So all the discussion about, it says 10 to 50 days. It was the lawyer that made us, lawyers don't make you do anything, they advise you. It was the lawyers that advised us to use the full 50 days. and this was about legal precedent regarding challenges amongst electorates and precedents that have happened in the state. So we have to give you a minimum of 10 days, a maximum of 50 days notice. And on the next slide, I think I talk about the counselor and the lawyer. And so we needed to have the special meeting. We needed to mail the meeting notice to you. He recommended the absentee ballot, and he recommended we use the full 50 days allowed by law. That is exactly what we did on the first election. So my mates, my fellow board members, my colleagues, go back to the 3 options on voting periods. Next slide. Yeah. That one there. So we've agreed to send option 4 to our members for your consideration. And now we need to make a decision on the voting period, which will answer, I forget who asked me the question about dates. Duff. This will get us to the dates. So if you could take me to the 21-day slide. Keep going. Keep going. That's it. So a 21-day, by the way, the quickest we can make this happen is another week from now because of all the printing requirements that the staff has to take care of to be able to get the meeting notice and the absentee ballot out to all of our homeowners. And so I asked what was the shortest window I could have. I've got reasonable assurance that we can make it happen a week from today. So that would begin day 1 of the 21-day voting period. Day 21 would be 3 June. That would be the day of the special assessment special meeting, and the vote would be final. I have to give the staff time to do their special assessment billing process because there are requirements based on our policy on what they do as far as giving notice to you all as members, and that's 45 days in advance of a billing requirement, you'll be notified. And so the special assessment payment would be due on 26 July, and the late payment date would be 12 August, which would allow us to pay off the Mountain View loan before the September payment is due on 9 September. So that's a 21-day window. Questions?
No, I understand about the 45 days.
I was looking for questions.
Yeah, you don't need
No question?
You're good?
Yeah, but
you understand?
I'm good, but I just want people to understand that this, either 21 days, 30 days, 50 days, also coincides with the payment of your second half PAO.
No. That's not true.
It doesn't have to, I know it doesn't but it'll happen at the same time.
No. The POA date is established per our policy, okay? That date's not changing. This is a special assessment pay window that Walter and his staff will have to execute in addition to the July POA.
Okay, I just want people to understand that there'll be two.
Yeah, trust me, we'll clarify
Okay,
this
all right.
ad nauseum. That's what the purpose of next week's meeting will be,
All right,
okay? All I got to do is get the board through 21 days, 30 days, and 50 days. You're my target, okay? So let's go to the 30-day chart. Same thing, 14 May would be day 1 of the voting period. 13 June, 10 days later, becomes day 30 of the voting period. The special assessment special meeting and the vote will be final on 13 June. On 20 June, we get the billing cycle launched. Payments would be due on 5 August. Late payments, 20 August. Again, we get to pay the bills before the September 9 payment is due. Next slide, please. The 50-day timeline. To July, kind of a special day in my life, that's my birthday, is day 50 of the voting period. Would be the special assessment special meeting, and the vote would be final. 17 July would be the billing date launch. We have a holiday weekend in there, humma. 29 August, the payments would be due. 13 September, the delinquent day for the assessment, and we'd be paying the loan off before the October pay. So the difference in the voting windows is how soon, both the 21 and 30 days, we can pay the loan off in September. The 50-day wouldn't allow us to pay the loan off until October. And so, having laid all that out, I now open this up for questions or comments for board members.
Comment with the microphone on. Thank you. Obviously, we've got a lot of seasonal residents that have left, are leaving, are about to leave. So this is a bit of a unique time. I'm going to be in favor of a 30-day. I think the 50-day was kind of crazy, but that was probably overkill from a legal perspective. But the 30-day makes sense to me, mainly because we had an inordinate amount of paper ballots. People did paper ballots, and it's probably because they got it in the mail. They turned it around, put it back in the mail. So it is what it is. I think with seasonal residents, you're probably going to have a little longer gestation period between the mailing and them getting it wherever they are. That process probably is going to include potentially a forwarding at some point in time, my guess. Some of those people might take a week before they get that ballot, maybe a little longer. The coming back part may be a little longer than us sending it from the blue box in front of the office to the office, which took basically a day here. So that process could take a little longer. I'd like to make sure we ensure everyone has a chance to vote. And I'm a little concerned about the 21-day period being a little short for, the mail shows up and I'm not home and oh goodness, and on and on and on. I just would like to, so I'm suggesting 31 days, so I'll quit talking. 30 days. Sorry.
Yeah, I would agree. If you look at it, there's really no fundamental difference between when we pay the loan off, whether you choose 21 or 30 days. It both gets paid off in the before the September payment. So, and like Dan, I guess I'm a little concerned about, particularly we're doing this in the summer. We got 20% of the people that move or leave, 25%. A lot of them probably have their mail forwarded. You'd like to think everybody's electronic and the mail doesn't even make any difference, but the reality is we had a very high percentage of people, for whatever reason, that chose to vote with paper. So we have to assume we're going to get a large volume of mailed ballots in. We have to make that assumption. So the 50 days, you're right. I mean, we went with the lawyer's recommendation. That's what he recommended. So, but I think 30 days is probably the right way to go. That'd be my opinion.
Okay, and I'm just the opposite. I look at the dollars that we can save if we do it in 21 days, and as Mike said, almost everybody voted in the first 2 weeks. This gives you 3 weeks, because as the money flows in, we can make monthly payments. Save ourselves thousands of dollars. I did a little projection on it, and if the money starts flowing in early and we start making weekly payments, we can save up to $30,000 in interest if we go with the 21-day program. That's my take.
Well, again, I guess the only concern is from a timing standpoint. I mean, obviously, if we were going to do it strictly from an income standpoint, we'd give 5 days, because then we could pay off real early. Okay, so now but is that fair to the residents? Well, we have to walk that. So we have to do 10 days, but realistically, I think we just have to walk that fence between being realistic, knowing that it's the summer, and knowing how many paper ballots there were, and it still gets us the cash, but again, I don't know that we can look at it purely from my financial standpoint as what's best for the HOA from an income standpoint. That's just the way I'm thinking. So anyway.
I'm fluctuating. I'm the one that put the 21-day in, and I'll tell you why. Our staff, our four-person finance group is going to have a horrendous June and July. I had originally said, and it does say in our CC&Rs, that the board can change the POA assessment. I wanted to make it simultaneously, so you would only have, you would only have, if we had the meeting on the 14th, then I would say that the special assessment billing would be launched on the 7th. Now, I know that would put a huge burden on our staff, but I think it's going to be confusing to our residents to have to pay their PAO, and now I got to pay my special assessment. I wanted them simultaneously. And by law, we could. But that's going to put a huge financial burden on people. So I'm fluctuating. I'm sorry.
Okay. We can only plan on what we know. We don't have a yes vote yet. And so all of the planning to execute dealing with that will go on as the vote is going on, whichever the period is. Don't have all those answers here this minute. Obviously, we have lots of thoughts about how to accelerate the payment process, all those kinds of things. The task here is to give you the vote, get your results. If it's yes, then we have to go this way. If it's no, then we don't have to do a whole lot. And so I'm intentionally trying not to overcomplicate this because an awful lot of feedback I've received was we made the last vote way too complicated. And so I'm just trying to keep the conversation focused on we want to vote, we want to pay off the loan. All the broken field running we can sort out over the next couple of weeks. But what we're trying to do is, bottom line is 21 days and 30 days gets us to paying off the September, before the September note is due. The 50-day gets us into October. So from a paying off the loan objective, 21 and 30 both accomplished this. Now, I'm an advocate for a minimum of 30 days simply because of the conversation that went on last summer during the strategic plan and the survey that we asked you all to participate in. We, the board members at that time, took a lot of grief because we were actually asking residents to give us feedback in the middle of the summer. Well, now we're going to do the same thing with a vote. And I don't want to shortchange anybody who wants to take the opportunity to vote. Having said that, I will come off of 50 days and support 30.
I think that we agreed to the 1,500. I honestly, quicker the better. When he said that everybody really voted in the first 2 weeks, hopefully people will do a little more electronic. My vote's 21.
After they get a chance to talk to us. Is there any more discussion amongst the board?
Well, another question. or maybe Walter, I don't know. If we go with the 21 and, looking at the timeline here, the special assessment payments are due on July 26th. If that day payments started coming in, or let's say the last week in July, couldn't you start doing what you talked about, doing the little incremental payments to the people, the weekly payments to the bank? Okay, so it still would be paid off by September 1st. We could still do the same thing in the 30-day timeline. We would, once the payments are due on August 5th, you could still keep paying in August, right? You're losing 9 days. I don't know if losing 9 days is worth it to, like you said, Matt, with our strategic plan. That was a big cry last year. You can't do this while we're gone for the summer. I don't know. I don't know if for 9 days, if it's worth it. Yeah,
As
but
you
that's
said,
how you
though,
think.
we got plenty of time to decide this. This doesn't have to be decided today. We don't even know if it's going to pass. We got plenty of time. Were you looking to actually make a decision today on this?
Mark, we have to decide today because that's what we're going to build next week's meeting off of. All right? It's only 2 decision points today. We're going to send option 4 to the residents. If so, now we got to put the voting period on it. Because we're going to have to produce a ballot, and all this information will have to be on the ballot. And so we have to declare ourselves so the staff can go to work and deliver what we need to do so we can explain to everybody what we're going to do and how Mike's going to make another election happen. Okay? So I will open it up to your thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. What do you think? 21 days, 30 days, 50 days? Okay, we can make this a participation sport. I can move. Who likes 50 days? Who likes 30 days? Who likes 21 days? The 30s have it. Now that's democracy at work. Well, yeah, if I'd have been smart enough when it was standing room only to do something like that, I could have saved a lot of time. Okay, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to look around the room. I know how much you care about what's going on in the community because of the number of people that have showed up here today. And I want you to know that we appreciate you and we appreciate the feedback because we are trying to get it right for all of us. Having said that, I need a motion.
I'm really having trouble with a microphone, and that's hard for someone who's usually on stage. I make a motion that our voting period have a 30-day timeline, as stated. That's, no, 30, not 50, Chris, please.
Put the 30-day slide
up. Could you put
up,
the
Rick.
30-day slide up, please? Thank you. As described in the slide that is now before you.
I have a motion to approve the 30-day voting window. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and I have a second. All in favor of approving the 30-day voting window? Oh, well, we already did it. We kind of got out in front of ourselves. Would anybody else, before we vote, would you like to comment on the 30-day motion? They're ready to go home too. All in favor of the 30-day voting period signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
Chuck says yes.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Fellow board members, I appreciate your efforts today. With that, we'll adjourn the meeting.
Okay, we gotta go. We got an FWR meeting we gotta go to.